Okay, let's dive right into this explainer of the source material and turn you into a bona fide pest detective. You flipped on the kitchen light late at night, and boom, something scurries across the floor. Your gut reaction? Probably a mix of disgust and panic, right? Well, today, we're going to decode exactly what's crawling around your home and figure out if it's just a harmless visitor or a literal structural menace waiting to cost you thousands of dollars.
So what is the actual difference between a bug just seeking shelter from the rain and one trying to completely eat your house? That's the ultimate question here. We've all seen a random spider or cricket inside, but how do you know when that bug is an accidental wanderer versus a hidden destroyer? To solve this mystery, we're going to look at the physical evidence, profile the suspects, and classify the threat levels step by step.
All right, starting us off with level 1, the occasional invaders. These are the usual suspects that cause a whole lot of unnecessary panic for homeowners. By definition, occasional invaders are insects normally found outside that end up invading homes temporarily or just completely by accident. We're talking about crickets or maybe those little amphipods known as scuds that pop up after a heavy rain. The thing is, these bugs don't actually want to live in your house. They're just lost or seeking temporary refuge.
So why do they even bother breaking in? Well, usually they wander inside to escape extreme weather, whether that's a brutal drought, a massive heat wave, freezing cold, or heavy rain. Other times, they're just desperately foraging for a quick meal or a sip of water, or maybe seeking a safe spot to overwinter. They are definitely not trying to set up a permanent colony in your living room.
And here's a fun fact from the source material: the truth about one of the most feared occasional invaders, the spider, might actually surprise you. The data shows that spider bites are super rare in humans. Most spiders you find inside are just harmless helpers, feeding on other small bugs. If you want them gone, honestly, skip the toxic chemicals. Just keep your house vacuumed. You'll reduce their insect food source, which naturally reduces the spiders.
Moving up the threat board to level 2, the ant versus termite dilemma.
So what happens when the bugs aren't just visiting? Seeing a swarm of winged insects inside your house is enough to make anyone's heart drop. And this brings up arguably the most crucial detective skill you can learn as a homeowner, identifying whether that swarm is just a mostly harmless flying ant or a highly destructive swarming termites.
You have to look really closely at the physical evidence. An ant has this very distinct pinched waist and bent antennae. They almost look like little elbows. A termite, on the other hand, it has a thick, broad waist that runs straight down its body and perfectly straight beaded antenna. If you're investigating and you spot that broad waist and straight antenna, yeah, it is absolutely time to sound the alarm.
Which escalates us right to level 3, the silent destroyers, termites.
If you've identified those straight antennae, we are at a major threat level. Termites do not just wander in. They are highly organized invaders. They operate through simple metamorphosis and live in massive colonies. The eastern subterranean termite, for instance, can have colonies ranging from 50,000 to over 350,000 members. They operate in a super strict caste system of workers, soldiers, and reproductives, making them incredibly efficient at devouring the cellulose in your home's wood. Now here is a slightly gross but absolutely fascinating biological secret from the explainer. Termites actually cannot digest wood entirely on their own. Nope, they rely on one-celled protozoans, bacteria, and special enzymes in their gut to break down that cellulose. And because they aren't born with these microbes, the young nymphs have to rely on a process called trophallaxis, which is essentially food sharing to get vital gut protozoans directly from the older workers. Like I said, a little stomach churning, but brilliant. To figure out exactly which termite suspect is eating your house, a top-tier detective examines the wings of the swarmers. You want to look at the leading edge of the front wing. The drywood termite has 4 strong veins. Compare that to the highly invasive Formosan termite, which only has 2 strong veins. Plus, its wings are distinctly covered with these tiny little hairs. And speaking of the Formosan termite, this guy is one of our most wanted suspects. They boast huge colonies that can easily exceed 1 million members. If you happen to find the soldiers, this aggressive invader can be definitively identified by their very distinct, teardrop-shaped heads. That's totally unlike the rectangular heads you'd see on native termites. But what if you don't find the insects themselves? Well, a good detective looks for what the suspect left behind. If you're dealing with drywood termites, the ultimate telltale sign is their frass. They leave behind these hard, dry fecal pellets.
Put those under a magnifying glass, and you'll see they have exactly 6 concave sides. No joke. These unique pellets don't change in shape, size, or color over time, making them permanent evidence at the crime scene.
Of course, if you completely miss the wing veins, the teardrop heads, and those uniquely shaped pellets, you will eventually find this. Severe structural wood damage is the final, undeniable proof of a severe and usually subterranean termite infestation, and at that point, you're in for a massive headache.
All right, let's shift gears to level 4, the wood-boring beetles. Because termites definitely aren't the only insects threatening your home's structural integrity. Enter the true powder post beetle. Unlike termites, these insects undergo complete metamorphosis. They exclusively target hardwoods, leaving behind tiny, round exit holes, usually just a 32nd to an 1/8 of an inch wide. And the real giveaway? They push out extremely fine, silky frass that looks and feels exactly like face powder. You can contrast that tiny footprint with the old house borer. These beetles prefer softwoods, specifically wood that's under 10 years old. Because they're much larger bugs, they leave significantly larger oval-shaped exit holes, up to 3/8 of an inch wide, and their frass, it's tightly packed and coarse, completely unlike the silky powder left by the powder post beetle. Now for our final category, Level 5, the carpenter ant deception.
Our final suspect on the board today is a total master of deception. The biggest misconception out there is that carpenter ants eat wood just like termites. Actually, scratch that. They don't eat it at all. They merely excavate it. They chew it up and spit it out, purely to build their nesting galleries. Because they aren't digesting the wood, the galleries they carve out inside your walls are perfectly smooth, almost like they were sanded down, and completely free of the mud you'd normally find with subterranean termites.
To catch them, you really have to know their habits. For one, they're primarily nocturnal. They often set up satellite colonies inside a structure while their main nest might be sitting in a tree stump outside. But your real smoking gun is the ejected frass. Since they don't eat the wood, their frass cleverly contains dead insect fragments and pupal cases mixed right in with the wood shavings rather than uniform digested wood pellets.
Okay, time for a quick quiz based on the explainer to test your new detective skills. Which of the following termite species attacks wood with moisture levels less than 15%? Is it A, Formosan, B, Eastern Subterranean, C, Desert, or D, Powder Post, also known as the drywood termite?
If you guessed D, you are spot on. It's the powder post or drywood termite. Unlike the subterranean varieties that absolutely need moisture and mud tubes to survive, drywood termites require zero contact with the ground. They can survive and thrive right inside the super dry wood of your attic or walls, which makes them a uniquely stealthy threat.
As the source material warns, occasional invaders often pose a challenge simply because they're less frequently encountered. They are definitely tricky to identify. But now that you know how to read the clues, from the bend of an antenna to the texture of a sawdust poil, are you ready to uncover what's really hiding in your walls? Keep your eyes peeled and stay curious.